Well, here we go. I don't know what else to say other than, you know what? Just basically more of the same from the Pirates, isn't it? Seems like it's more of the same. Paul Skenes was really good. Probably didn't get deep enough into the game for them to have a chance to win. And, of course, it's one of those things where, okay, I look at it and I say basically this was a bad night at the office in every other regard. Let's talk about the things we talked about before the season began. Okay, let's talk about them. Are you ready? We talked about Bednar being shaky. Well, Bednar was shaky. We talked about the fact that the offense wasn't going to be very good. They did score 4 runs. I give them credit for that. They had a total of 4 hits. I mean, the bottom line is, they had 1 inning where they scored a couple of runs or whatever, but for the most part, Reynolds had a 2-run double or whatever it was, 2-run single, whatever it was, and of course, Gonzalez hit a home run. But the reality is, for the most part, they were 4 of 31. Okay, so yeah, they scored 4 runs, but they were 4 of 31, including in the 9th inning. Joey Bart obviously didn't get it done when he needed to. Basically, just a bad day at the office. And I think that it's going to be really, really difficult for the most part when you think about it. It is now going to be one of these things where until some things change about this, and until they get some consistency among some of their players, I think we're going to be sitting here again with this kind of same old situation, basically. I mean, Tommy Pham got the big double in the 9th, but it didn't really lead into anything, right? Struck out twice. Reynolds was okay. You got the big hit. Cruz was 0 for 4. Bart was 0 for 4. McCutchen was 0 for 4. That's basically your 3, 4, 5 hitters, right? I'm sorry. Yeah, 3, 4, 5 hitters were 0 for 12. You don't win many games when your 3, 4, 5 hitters are 0 for 12. Endy Rodriguez was at first base. Didn't exactly distinguish himself, I would say, for the most part, at first base. Because to me, when I look at it from that standpoint, I mean, you've got to just do a better job of preparing yourself for the season. And I'm talking about the Pirates at large. The Pirates at large, to me, I'm sorry, but you absolutely knew, okay, that it was going to be a struggle to figure out who can do what at first base. And I'm just going to tell you, you didn't do a very good job of getting Endy Rodriguez prepared for first base at all. You just didn't. And so when you think about it like that, are we surprised that he made an error? And I think the error actually led to a run, if I'm not mistaken. And so you look at it from that standpoint, or maybe they got out of that, but the bottom line is he made an error, and, maybe it will lead to a run at some point. Actually, let's look at where we're at here. I'm just trying to remember exactly. Yeah. Okay, so it didn't lead to an error because they got a double play, but still, bottom line is it's going to lead to a run. It absolutely is. And so I feel like, when you think about it this way, it's not good enough what the Pirates did this offseason, and it's probably not good enough in many, many ways to think about what this team actually could be or will be. Period. Just doesn't feel like there's a lot to really get excited about. Period. Doesn't feel like that at all. Feels like, to me, all of the things that we were concerned about with the Pirates were basically came true today. You got a really good start from Paul Skenes. You had, obviously, Andy Rodriguez made the air. Colin, Holderman, and David Bednar looked like they didn't miss a beat from last year. And basically, outside of Gonzalez hitting a home run and Reynolds with was it a single or double or whatever it was, for the most part, they had no offense. I'm just not really feeling good about what I saw tonight. Of course, I'm not an expert. Let's bring in the expert, and that, of course, is our good friend Andrew Destin. Covers the Pirates. But although your time is coming to an end, right? You're going to cover the Seattle Mariners, if I'm not correct. Is that true?
Yeah, you heard correctly, Paul. Yeah, I'm headed out to Seattle. Going to cover the Mariners, the Seahawks, and the Kraken. Doing so for the Associated Press. So looking forward to doing that. But first, got a little bit of Pirates baseball to watch, and that was a heck of a game. And for the first 8 innings or so, for 7 innings or so, until it became classic Holderman and Bednar time. Then we got reminded of why the back end of the bullpen is still very much a question mark for this team. But certainly one to watch from a distance, that's for sure.
Well, and I think that if you think about it, Andrew, it's really kind of hard to get all that excited about this team based on what they did in the offseason, because I don't know that they made themselves that much better. I mean, what did they win? 74 games, 75 games last year?
76, yeah.
76. I'm willing to concede that maybe Skenes is a little bit better than he was last year, and whatever. So maybe they'll get, I don't know, 4 more wins, 3 more wins, but I don't just see where they're going to get this great jump, especially when you just lost the first Paul Skenes start of the year. You just lost it.
Right. You need each and every one of those you need in your bag, and they didn't get one of them tonight. So kind of a problem, and especially when he pitches good, right? Like, it's one thing if you lose a Paul Skenes start and it's because, okay, he gives up 3 or 4 runs and it's in a losing effort. That's one thing. But he pitched well today. He looked good. Like, he got you into the 6th inning. I mean, that was just that's a tough pill to swallow for Pirates fans. It's definitely not what you want to see here in the early stages of the year.
No, not at all. And I mean, I think, again, I feel like, everything that we talked about this offseason, we saw a little bit of it, a little bit of a time at a time, but we saw a little bit of it. And here's the thing I'm going to ask you. Let's start here, Andrew. I am not one to, always hammer a team or an organization.
Right.
And even though the Pirates give you plenty of fodder and everything else, I'm always willing early in the season to say, okay, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. But here's something I don't understand, okay? You knew you had a problem at first base. You knew the guy you brought in was hurt. You knew that you were going to try a bunch of other guys. So why in the hell did Andy Rodriguez only play there once in the entire spring? And then you start him on opening day there. That is something I have no idea what you're doing.
Yeah.
And, of course, he makes an error. It doesn't lead to a run, but, of course, he makes an error. I'm sure if he continues to play there, he'll make an error that's costly, in the next couple of days.
Yeah. No, your guess is as good as mine, Paul. I mean, I think the thing with Andy that's so confusing, so confounding, is that I figured it would have been in his best interests and the Pirates' best interest to give him a good amount of time at first base this year or in the spring, because he's coming off a pretty serious injury with the right elbow, right? Like, this isn't a guy who played 120 games at catcher in the minors last year or anything like that. Like, he's still coming off of fairly serious surgery there. Rest him a little. Let him get some time at first base. Mix it up in between with the catching stuff. So I understand the frustration. Certainly, I understand it, and I hear it loud and clear. It's just very confusing stuff in terms of how they manage Andy Rodriguez's usage. Certainly, yesterday or throughout the spring as well as today, with now having him play first base.
It just didn't make sense to me.
Yeah,
it really didn't make sense to me. And I felt like, if you think about it, why are you doing this? From the standpoint of, like, if you really want your team to get better, right, you've got to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to get better in spring training. But this learning on the job stuff during the season doesn't really work for me.
No, it's so confusing too, because it's like you had every opportunity. This is a guy who's played first base before. Dude, if you really, really weren't that interested in having DJ Stewart on your opening day roster, then why was he around so late? Why was Endy Rodriguez not getting more starts from like March 14th onward? You had opportunities. There was no shortage of those. He could have gotten, it's a lot to ask of a young player, but you could give him extra work on the backfields in February and March. Like, you had so much time to work with. So, that's just kind of how I look at it.
I just don't understand it. I mean, what are their other options?
Yeah. I mean, it was going outside the 40-man roster for a guy like DJ Stewart or Derek Hall, or it would be to keep Nick York or Billy Cook on the opening day roster, which evidently they were not interested in, or it's, a guy like Endy Rodriguez, which Endy, very capable of playing first base, but he hasn't played there full time in a long time. He got some time there in the minors, coming up through the Pirates system, in addition to catching, played second, played the outfield, played first base, but didn't get time there this spring, really, aside from the one game. I just doesn't make a lot of sense to me, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand it when it comes to, looking at what they did at first base. The worst part about it is from, the minute that they DFA'd Rowdy Tellez last year, they knew they had a problem at first base. Right. And I guess you could say, well, they went out and signed, was it Solomedo or whatever his name is. But, I mean, you knew you had an issue. You had to have some sort of a plan that's better than this.
Right. And, with Horowitz, it's just you're waiting it out.
Horowitz, that's his name, yes.
Right. Whenever he comes back from injury, right? But, they knew that he was injured in mid-February. You had 6 weeks to work with from that point onward to figure out what exactly is wrong with the guy. How do you remedy that issue in the interim? Who do you find to fill the spot and fill a void in the interim? You had plenty of opportunities, plenty of time to find guys, whether that was minor leaguers, whether that was guys like an Endy Rodriguez that you could groom for the position and give him ample time, whether that's signing a free agent to a short 1-year deal, just this guy who's a stopgap, and make sure that it isn't too much of a rush to get Horowitz back up to speed. I didn't understand it. I think you had opportunities to get guys, and for the Pirates not to, very frustrating stuff for fans.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's so hard. It's just so hard to explain some of the things they do. Now let's take it in reverse order here. Should there be a concern about David Bednar?
I think so. I mean, he's going to get the opportunities in these leverages spots for the interim, right? Like they haven't come out and concretely said, hey, he's the closer, he's the guy moving forward, but they gave him the ball in the 9th inning with the game 4-4, right? And we've seen how much David struggled last year and how much he struggled during spring training. This is very much a sincere talking point that needs to be brought up is, do the Pirates have a closer problem? And specifically with David Bednar, how are they going to get him back on track? How are they going to get their 2-time All-Star back to pitching like a 2-time All-Star? Didn't look like it today. You can say a lot of different things, right? That the defense maybe didn't necessarily help him, but he also gave up some hard hit balls. Like that ball off the wall, sure, Oneil Cruz could have played it better and kept it to a double instead of a triple, but what are we talking about at that point? It's still a leadoff double or a leadoff triple. It's just
right.
Bednar's not quite getting the job done. They've got other guys in the mix, like a Colin Holderman or Denis Santana, that they like in leverage spots. Well, Colin Holderman really struggled today. Denis Santana, got bailed out basically with the bases juiced because Ryan Baracchi came in and saved the job. Just not a great spot, not a great look there for the Pirates for the back end of the back end of the bullpen. So yes, they have a David Bednar problem, but maybe they just have a bullpen problem at large.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. Colin Holderman. I know he was not healthy last year, and that was a problem. And when Colin Holderman, went through that stretch, they finally had to shut him down. Mm-hmm. Listen, I will say this: right before they hit that tied the game, it looked like he got squeezed on a strike that should have been probably strike 3, end of the inning. I get that, but there were a number of different times in this game where I thought the umpires gave the Pirates a favorable, call on a ball or a strike. And the bottom line is, just because that happened, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to give up the hit the very next pitch. You know what I'm saying?
Nobody's saying that you have to. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's how it works.
Right. So Holderman, to me, if he's not able to figure it out, man, this is going to be a problem.
Mm-hmm. No doubt about it. And I don't know that there's any real concrete solution outside of what you're looking at in terms of guys that we've already mentioned. Denis, Santana, Colin, Holderman. I don't know if those are true solutions. And I don't think at this stage in the year you're going to go outside the organization and go and try and get guys in a trade. One, because the Pirates have never really demonstrated to be the kind of team that goes out and trades for closers. Like, that's not necessarily who they are. But also because you look at it and say, hey, it's so early in the year. Like, you have to give David Bednar his chance. You got to let him earn his stripes. But how many blown saves, how many losses are you going to be willing to put up with before enough is enough? You wish the guy nothing but the best, right? It's a Cinderella story in a lot of ways of the local kid gets traded back and finds his bearings and settles in as a solid closer for a number of years. That's not the case right now in 2025, and it's a tough one to watch, but certainly for the Pirates' sake, they need Bednar to get right. And right now, at least based off of an opening day showing, didn't necessarily get right, but he is more than capable of doing so. It's just, can he revert back to that form? That's the $1 million question.
Right. I mean, again, you have to look at it like that and just say, basically, if he can't find it, boy, then you start to wonder, maybe they should have paid the $10 million or whatever to keep Aroldis Chapman around.
Yep.
Because they spent it last year, and there were some of us saying, well, wait a minute, that's kind of a luxury item for a team that's not supposed to win, to have a setup guy. But he ended up being their guy, and he was pretty good. I guess, it's just really kind of frustrating. And then, of course, let's go one more to the checklist. Nick Gonzalez hits a bomb, and coming out of his stance or whatever happened, he gets hurt.
Right.
If you have to play any amount of time with Adam Frazier as your second baseman, that's probably not a good development either.
No, not great. And at least the good thing there is that in theory, this should be a relatively easy fix if, jumping to conclusions here, but if Nick Gonzalez is out for a significant period of time, you probably just call up Nick York from the minors and get him up there and make him your everyday second baseman. Second base is his natural spot. He's able to play it. He just barely missed out on making the opening day roster. So maybe that makes a lot of sense. Tough to say, but I would say that Nick York, you probably just fill one Nick in for the other one.
Right. I guess that, but still, Adam Frazier. Let's go one step further. Reynolds had to hit. Gonzalez had to hit. They had 4 hits and 31 at-bats. They basically, I know that they scored 4 runs. So you say, if you score 4 runs with Skenes on the mound, you should win. I agree. Right. But I don't know that it was like an offensive output where you say, boy, I feel really good about this offense. I know Tommy Pham had the double in the 9th that meant nothing. But at the end of the day, are we to be concerned about this? Thank you. Are we to be concerned about the offense at all?
I think so. I mean, I think just way that the roster is constructed, you look at it on paper and you would say that, okay, they've got some guys, they've got some boppers, but 1 through 9, is it a legitimately talented and deep lineup? I don't know that you can say that with the utmost confidence. I mean, Joey Bart on paper is a very fine catcher on the offensive side of the ball. First base right now, kind of a challenge. Nick Gonzalez could be league average there. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, Brian Hayes on the left side of the infield, that's a little bit below average in terms of the hitting side. Oneil Cruz could be among the better hitting, outfielders in baseball. Bryan Reynolds is up there with anybody, but that's a relatively thin lineup where you've really only got 3 or 4 guys maybe that you would say those are impact bats. The rest of the group is relatively average to below average. So the offense is always going to be a question mark with this team. I think the bigger question to me is just, can they defensively take another step? Can they defensively be a team that's better than last year? Because last year they were not a great defensive team, which certainly is not aided when you've got an offense that's, 5th worst in baseball or 4th worst in terms of scoring runs, whatever the number was last year. So the offense is certainly one thing, but I think to me, the other thing is, hey, defensively speaking, is this group of position players, is this lineup satisfactory? That much I'm not necessarily convinced about.
Well, again, if you look at it, I guess my thing, Andrew, is I don't see, and I haven't seen this since the end of the season. Right. I don't see where they're going to get better.
Yeah.
Offensively. Like, could Brian Hayes have a good season? I mean, I think at this point in his career, he is what he is. Yeah. Oneil Cruz maybe, hits for a little more average and then, in turn is able to hit, a few more home runs or whatever, but I don't know how much, there's going to be room there. Joey Bart, it's entirely possible he actually regresses, because of what his career has been. Nick Gonzalez is a nice little player. I don't know that he's a superstar, but he's a nice little player. He's fine.
Right.
Tommy Pham didn't hit last year. I'm not sure why we would think he's going to hit this year.
Right.
I'm just saying Kiner Falefa, I think, will be exposed as the everyday shortstop. I'm just looking at this team, and I'm saying to myself, if you are trying to make the case that this team is better, what is the case, at least offensively?
Right. To me, there's not – the only case you could make is that when Spencer Horwitz comes back healthy, that he solidifies things at first base. That, to me, is the only argument you could make, is that he would be, a plus to at least above-average defender there, could be an above-average bat. If he comes back healthy and is able to be a contributing guy who's got an 800 OPS and plays above-average defense, then sure, maybe Spencer Horwitz is the key to all of this. But the current group, the one that's healthy, the one that's currently on the 26-man roster, I don't know that there's a whole lot of guys that you can look at it and say, that makes them tangibly better than in 2024. Because the reality is that if they're going to be better this year, you need guys like Jack Sawinski to be a heck of a lot better. You need guys like Henry Davis to eventually come up from the minors and be impact guys. Like you said, you need Joey Bart to, stay at that level, which is no guarantee. Like if you compare it to the rest of his career, he very well could take a step back. So I don't think when you look at this roster, you can realistically say, yeah, this is better than last year. I think that's a tough sell.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you go through everything that they did offensively in the offseason, they really didn't do a whole lot. What did you see from Skenes today?
Yeah, I thought he looked really good, and that's no shocker, right? Like, this is Paul Skenes. We've kind of come to expect that this guy's good. Maybe the efficiency wasn't quite there what you would like it to be, but he also didn't really necessarily get aided all that much by the defense. I mean, kind of Falefa had the one ball they probably would have liked to have bad back that leads to a run. I mean, pitching-wise for Skenes, the dominance is evident. Frankly, it was a great pitcher's duel. Alcantara looked very good for the Marlins as well. But I just thought that Skenes, what he demonstrated, this is a guy who has all the potential in the world, right, to be a Cy Young guy. There's a reason that he was a Rookie of the Year award winner last year. This is a guy who very well could be a front runner for the Cy Young award in 2025. He looked excellent. The efficiency was there, got through, 5 2/3 or 5 1/3? Like he was very solid. I have no complaints about Paul Skenes. The issue is that, is this going to be the story of the 2025 Pirates, is that when guys like Skenes or Keller or whoever it may be turns in a great start, is this how it gets floundered away? Is this how it gets, wasted?
Or worse, even worse, is that, what happens if, they get a great start and they just can't score runs?
Yeah, that's the biggest issue. You just let that get squandered away and you go, oh, wow, he went 7 innings, 2 runs, and the Pirates lose 2-1. Like, that would be the most frustrating reality. And I think there's going to be a number of games like that this year. I don't think it's inconceivable to say the Pirates are going to lose a lot of 1-run ball games. And that's not to say that they can't win their fair share of them too, but I think that's a very real reality for fans to have to come to terms with, is that there's going to be a lot of games where it's, oh man, like they just didn't score enough to supplement what was a really good start from a starting pitcher, or good outings from the relievers to maintain a 6-inning 2-run effort or whatever it may be. I think that's a very, very real reality.
Yeah, that's what's scary to me, is that they look like a team that's not going to be able to score a lot of runs, and if that's the case, it means their pitching staff's going to have to be basically perfect in some ways. Mm-hmm. And I think that is going to be a situation of where I just don't know that that's realistic.
No, not with this group. Listen, it's certainly a good pitching staff, but I don't know that it's necessarily the best in baseball. It's a very good one, but if you've got guys like Jared Jones out for at least 6 weeks, that's certainly not a great development for the group. Who's to say that Bailey Falter repeats what he did last year? Andrew Heaney is a nice guy, but he's not a front end of the rotation guy. Like, it's a very good rotation. The reason it's very good is because it's got Paul Skenes in it. Outside of that, it's not like it's light years better than other rotations across baseball. Frankly, it's very comparable. So it's a good rotation. It's a very good one. I don't think it's an elite rotation. I think it's got an elite starting pitcher. I think it's got an ace. Outside of that, I wouldn't say that it's, by any means the best in baseball or anything.
And you gotta say, with Jared Jones hurt, what do they really have in this, in the sort of the 2-hole? You know what I mean? If Jared, hopefully, the hope is that Mitch Keller can be Mitch Keller, and especially early season Mitch Keller, who seems to be better than late season Mitch Keller. But at the end of the day, although the one year he was the opposite, he was bad at the beginning of the season and at the end of the season. But what last season he was really good, and then all of a sudden he just kind of fell off the face of the earth. It's tough if you've got guys that you're counting on to be really good. And you squander these kind of opportunities. Like today's an opportunity to win. Paul Skenes walks off the mound with a 4-1 lead. You got to win the game. To me, I have real concerns about whether or not what we saw today is going to be something we see on repeat quite often throughout the season.
Right. Yeah. I think this was very much an example of the most infuriating losses that Pirates fans unfortunately could get acclimated to is, hey, Paul Skenes looks really good. Hey, the offense chips in some timely hits. Oh, no, the bullpen blows it. Oh, no, the defense doesn't hold up its end of the bargain. Oh, no, the offense is fine, but not quite good enough. It's got a few clutch hits, but not enough of them. And you just sit there wondering, wow, they were so close. How come they weren't able to put it all together and complete the game? Right. That's the fact of the matter is that they have a lot of good parts here. Is it enough that this group can win consistently? Can they be an above 500 team with this current group as it's currently constructed? Not so convinced, but there's probably going to be a lot of games that look just like this one, unfortunately, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is Santana wasn't very good, right? Holderman wasn't very good. Bednar, that's three of your main guys in your bullpen. The other thing, Andrew, is I thought that Cruz had two really bad plays in the field.
Totally.
The first one was in the 8th inning when they were still up 4-2. Guy on second hits, they hit a single. Cruz comes up and sort of double clutches a little bit. As soon as he double clutches, you have to throw the ball to second. You have to understand the run scoring isn't what you're really that concerned about. It's the guy on first getting to second, which he did because Cruz went home.
Right.
And the next guy obviously knocks him in with a hit.
Totally.
There was that, and I thought I don't know that he should have caught the ball in the 9th inning, but I thought that he played it really horribly and probably turned a double into a triple.
No doubt. Completely agreed with the latter one, especially. That's one that, in the grand scheme of things, does it really matter because they end up scoring the way they did? Sure, maybe not as much, but it's just not great optics. It's have understanding of the time and place, and I think you bringing up the 8th inning play in particular, right? Double clutching. By that point, it's over. But also, throwing through allows the runner to advance a bag. You have to know at that point in time, that's not the play. That's not the play to be made. Live to see another day. Don't allow the Marlins to be in an even better position to score that next run. Scratch it, bite it, whatever you want to call it. Just live to see another day. That's what you have to do if you're Oneil Cruz.
Right. I just feel like it's got to be, a situation to me where he's got to know what's going on in the game. Understand this, So, I mean, I thought two bad plays by him. Obviously, Andy Rodriguez had a bad play. We talked about it. Shouldn't be surprised because the guy only played one game in spring at first base. I think, it's interesting. Could there be a point where Henry Davis plays first if Andy Rodriguez makes a few more errors down there at first? I mean, what is the plan with Henry Davis?
That's a great question. I think the plan as of right now is let the guy continue to just focus on the hitting side. That's what they're most preoccupied with Henry on. Then on the catching side, it's, hey, just allow him to stick in a position that he's comfortable at. I think that's what makes the most sense for Henry Davis right now is that, hey, listen, there are a lot of catchers there, right? There's Andy Rodriguez, there's Joey Bart, even Jason DeLay is in the minors, and is a very capable major league backup if necessary. I think the deal with Henry Davis right now is that it is in the Pirates' interests and his interests to keep him at a position where he can be consistent, where he can be comfortable, where he knows where he's going to play every day, and he can focus on the offensive side of the game. That's the stuff that really matters, is continuing to get him, offensively speaking, to focus on that end. Now, if that manifests in he has to move positions, sure, maybe that's in his cards, maybe that's in his future, but I don't know, because in 2023 they tried playing him in right field, and we saw how that went. That wasn't necessarily the best course of action there for him. So I would look at it and say, hey, you can play Henry Davis different spots in the field. You can move him to first base if you wanted to, but as of right now, hitting is what's most important with him, is getting that swing and getting those reps in line, and adding another position change to him. I feel like that just messes with what right now the focus should be. How can you make Henry Davis the best hitting version of himself in 2025?
Yeah, I mean, I think they need him to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
They absolutely need him to become a good player for them, but I just don't know that it's going to happen for him, to be honest.
Right.
You know, I can see in the comments, Andrew, people are already angry about Derek Shelton. I mean, I hate to say this, but could there come a time, you know, a month into the season, 2 months into the season, if this team is losing and losing and losing, and that they finally just say, a guy that's 200 or 150 games under 500 or whatever he is, maybe he's not our guy? I mean, is this something to watch, or are they steadfast in that he's going to be the guy, you know, even if they go 0-162?
No, I think that if they go 0-162, you're going to have to be a betting man, Paul, by prophesizing that here 161 games ahead of time. But no, I think they're going to ride with Shelton for a while. Like, it would have to be a really catastrophic April, a really catastrophic May. Like, they'd have to be going into June, like 12 to 15 games under 500, in my opinion, for them to even consider such a thing. As of right now, Shelton, sure, like maybe his seat is lukewarm, but the reality is that they look at him as the guy that they want to guide this ship into 2026. They would love for it to work out that way. They would love for it to be a 500 or better team, one that competes for the postseason, and Shelton is there the entire way. That's the best course of action for them, right? That being said, there is certainly some pressure on him, right? He's been the manager since 2020. This is the best chance he has to win, including last year too, right? 2024, that team underperformed. Frankly, it should have been a 500 or better team, at least in terms of what it was on paper or what it ended up accomplishing, all those sorts of things. I think that in 2025, this is a very, very good chance for Derek Shelton to have as successful a season as he's had with the Pirates. But as it stands right now, the only year that you could really say managerial-wise that he did a really banner job with was 2023, because he took a roster that didn't have particularly many starting pitchers in the second half. I think it was just Mitch Keller and Johan Oviedo. That you have to tip the cap and say Shelton did a great job managing that roster. Maybe not as much last year. So pressure's on. Pressure's on to win in Pittsburgh, that's for sure, for the Pirates.
Right, exactly. I will say this. If you also look at where they're at, right, it's going to be interesting to see if this is a situation of where both Cherington and Shelton are tied together. And basically it's like, listen, you put this team together, you've had 5 or 6 years, you've been running this team for 5 or 6 years or whatever it's been.
Right.
So
I think that Shelton's job is a little bit less secure than Cherington. I'm going to say that because if you read through the tea leaves a little bit and look at, you know, the promotions and the new hires they made within the Pirates front office, like they've really bolstered up the R&D divisions, all these different departments. Like I would look at those and say, okay, Cherington's job is probably a little bit more safe than Shelton's, but I don't think that's a guarantee by any means. I think to your point that, yeah, if this group, especially this one as it's currently constructed, isn't able to get it done, sure, you have to pin blame on Shelton, but you also have to pin blame on Cherington and say, this team wasn't good enough. This roster that he put together wasn't good enough. And who does that blame fall on? It's on the general manager. So, yeah, I'm right there with you, Paul. I think that's exactly what you're looking at, is that these guys, sure, they are on the hot seat. I think much more so on Shelton's end, but their seats are getting only warmer if these type of losses, if these kind of performances rack up here early in the season.
Yeah, I mean, you can't continue to do these kinds of things, and I think that's really the most difficult part of sort of being a Pirates fan, is you sometimes just seem to be at the mercy of, you know, all of this stuff. We'll get out of here in a few minutes, but tomorrow, obviously, Keller against Gillespie. I'm pulling this up right now. Connor Gillespie looks like, let's see, Connor Gillespie, he's not a rookie. I mean, what are we doing here?
No.
Last year he pitched for Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't pitch a lot, though. It looks like he was actually a reliever last year. What can you tell us about Connor Gillespie?
Yeah, I mean, career minor leaguer, guy who was drafted a number of years ago by the Orioles, 9th rounder out of ECU. Yeah, I mean, he was a starting pitcher in the minor leagues for the most part. The last couple of years, he split his time between Bowie and Columbus, AA for the Orioles, and then AAA for Cleveland. A little bit of a prospect, a guy who's intriguing, 27 years old, a little bit on the older side, but a guy who he's going to get the ball on the plate. I mean, he's not going to walk many guys. He's going to challenge you to hit it. Maybe not necessarily the best of stuff, but a guy who the ball is constantly on the plate. He's going to challenge guys. He's going to get his strikeouts. I mean, last year in the minor leagues, 113 innings, he had 119 strikeouts. So I look at Gillespie as a guy who certainly is interesting, certainly is somebody to keep tabs on, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, it's one of those things where you look at it and basically it's going to be very, very interesting to see, because now there's a little bit of pressure. There's a little bit of pressure on the Mitch Keller tomorrow to try and win, because if you lose, then you start saying, okay, now we're in a situation of where we actually have a problem, because you lose a couple of games, you know what, and all of a sudden things start to go south.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's that's when the pressure builds, right? I mean, I think it's just a situation of last year, right? Such a great start. 2023, such a great start. But this year, if things go south in Miami and then things go south against the Rays, then you come back and face a really tough opponent in the Yankees, you could be looking at a really tough start to the year going into that home slate there in April. So I think certainly for the Pirates, it's a stretch that you want to make the most of. You want to do the best with it. But yeah, it's not the easiest one on paper to start off the year 0-1. Thankfully for their sake, it is a 4-game set against the Marlins. So you can at the very least hope to split the series, but much easier said than done, especially once you've already burned your Skenes start. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. I mean, you burned a start already, and that's not good. By the way, hey, Pittsburgh, when you think of great roofs, you think of Greenwalt Roofing Company with over 20 years experience. Greenwalt knows your roof is your home's first line of defense from rain, wind, snow, and ice. That's why Greenwalt Roofing standard for your perfection is so important. You can trust their team of experienced installers will treat your property like it's their own when it comes to roof replacements. Greenwalt Roofing is Pittsburgh's only choice. Visit greenwaltroofing.com today or 412-314-8882 to schedule your free estimate. PA Contractor, number 36262. Andrew, when are you headed to the Pacific Northwest?
April 5th is my official departure date, so I will be there for the home opener. My dad is actually flying out here to help me move out all of my junk across the country. Got to take some tennis rackets and baseball gear and golf clubs and bike and all that sort of jazz. So, but yeah, leaving here on April 5th, and then I'll start out in Seattle in mid-April.
And aren't you, you're kind of from out that way somewhere, right?
Yeah, Bay Area, San Francisco. So I'll just be a couple states away, much easier for my folks to see me. It's certainly a big change. I'm going to miss Pittsburgh a lot, but it's one that I'm excited about for sure.
Well, one thing is not going to be there when you get there is the Pac-12.
No, Big Ten football country.
So, I mean, that's going to be a big change for you, big difference. But, well, you know what? Best of luck to you, young man. Stay in touch. You have to email me your phone number, by the way, because I don't have your phone number, which is why I had to go through Adam today to get in touch with you. So we could stay in touch, and hopefully we cross paths again. And it goes without saying, if you ever need anything, you can always call me.
Appreciate that, Paul. Definitely will take you up on that, and I'll shoot you a text here to make sure you got the number. It's
all right.
It's not a full 1-2.
Well, yeah. Yep. Game is always on at Archie's. Get down to Archie's on Carson. Archie's, home of 80-cent wings, Monday through Thursday. Home of the Paul Zeise grilled cheese sandwich. When you get down there, say hello to Archie. And, of course, tell him I sent you. All right, Andrew. Have a good night.
Yep. Thanks for having me, Paul. Appreciate it,
guys. All
right.
That's about it. We'll see you.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.